Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the 2016 re-release of the Grim Reaper Chopper. It's a 1/8 scale monogram kit, number 85-7541. It's a skill level 5 kit for the advanced builder due to some intricate assembly, but there are no decals with this kit. It's a re-release of the kit with a different box art from the original, and Revell has released this kit previously as the Harley-Davidson Freedom Chopper. There are 80 pieces molded in white, chrome, clear, and black, with some flexible tubing and soft black tires and well laid out instructions. It's a replica of the '74 design by Tom Daniel. This motorcycle has a coffin-shaped fuel tank, a king and queen seat, and raked out tubular forks. The bike is also featuring twin rectangular headlights, Goodyear tires, and a Maltese cross rest. The old school chopper is still looking great, even 40 years after its original debut. Now, its length is about 14 3/4 inches, width about 4 inches with a kickstand, and 5.5 inches high. Here is the layout of this kit, and you can see that these parts came right out of the box after we opened it. Yes, sir, it's your open box review in about 10 seconds. And just so you know, we'll be using mostly Testors Model 2 Blue and the enamel paints from Testors shot through a spray gun or used out of the bottle. Also remember to use the manufacturer's safety guidelines when using or referencing any of the products that you see here in the review. Construction starts with the frame and the front forks, and in this model I decided to use some bare metal foil to cover the front forks for a nice chrome look. So that's where you begin, by cutting off some strips, laying them on and burnishing them down just like tape, and then cutting off the excess with a very sharp hobby knife. Now you will also be able to detail the rest of the frame here with some semi-gloss black. And the left frame and right frame are sprayed with Model Master Black Metallic. And the front forks are then installed into position on the right side of the frame without glue. Then the left frame side is attached to the right, trapping the forks into position. Don't get glue on the front forks so they can be operational. One thing that I saw was that the seam of the two pieces that's created by the fuel tank. This can be corrected if you want to take the time to fill that seam in and smooth it out prior to paint. It'll give it a better contest appearance. With that in mind, I first sanded down the fuel tank to even out both sides of the tank, and then I used a little bit of putty to smooth it out onto the surface where the seam was. I then sanded the putty down and taped off the kit so that only the fuel tank would be repainted. And I spray painted the fuel tank again with some Model Master Black Metallic. Now the flash there picked up a trace of the seam, however to the naked eye the seam is gone. We'll gather up these pieces to start putting together the supports. So the engine support and the center frame support are sprayed Model Master Black Metallic, and then the voltage regulator gas cap and both plugs are painted Tester Silver. The ignition coil half number 7 and 8 are glued together and then painted flat black. The engine support and center frame support are then installed into the frame assembly, and the ignition coil assembly is attached to the front of the center frame support, and the voltage regulator is attached to the back of the center frame support. The plugs then are attached to the frame assembly where the rear tire will go on both sides. The gas cap is glued to the fuel tank on the frame assembly now too. Gather up these parts to begin some of the engine detail work, and the stand pivot is painted Model Master Black Metallic. The oil top tank is painted Tester Silver, and the chain drive is painted Tester Silver. That's the chain guard portion, and Model Master Flat Black for the sprockets, and Model Master Acrylic Dark Gray for the chain. The kickstand is installed into the stand pivot without glue, and the stand pivot assembly is snapped into place on the left side of the frame. Don't get glue on the kickstand there. The chain drive is installed onto the right frame side, and the oil tank top is attached to the bottom. Then the two tube pieces are cut to about 1 15/16 inches and attached to the posts on the oil tank bottom. Then the oil tank assembly is installed into the frame. You'll want to take a few minutes here to address the part number that's on the top here. I've marked it in black with a marker. Just take and sand that off or scrape it off and then sand it smooth before it's painted. You can see here in the center on the right side, one of the locating posts was broken off for my sample, so I drilled it out, and then I used a piece of pin, actually a portion of the thumbtack here, and used that as a locating pin replacement and superglued that into place as a suitable locating pin in view of the fact that the other one had broken off. Now we can work on the wheel assemblies, and the rear tire insert is placed into the rear tire, and then the rear wheel half number 14 gets installed into the rear wheel assembly there, and then rear wheel half number 15 is installed into the wheel assembly and attached to the rear wheel half number 14. Now offset those wires so that they look right. Now maneuver that rear wheel assembly into place onto the hub and install the rear tire into the frame assembly. It's out for the rear end portion, and the sissy bar in the rear fender gets sprayed black metallic, and the seat back is then glued to the seat, and the seat assembly painted flat black. The rear fender is installed into the frame assembly now, and then the sissy bar can be attached to the locating post there for the rear fender and the frame assembly. Then the seat assembly is glued into place to the frame assembly at the rear fender. Now pull these parts out of the kit and we'll start working on the engine. Now the 4 push rods and both push rod plates are painted silver, and now the left crankcase half is attached to the right, and the left rear cylinder half is attached to the right, and then the rear cylinder assembly is attached to the crankcase assembly. The push rod plate is attached to the crankcase in front of the rear cylinder head, and then 2 of the push rods are attached to the push rod plate. A cylinder head is then attached to the rear cylinder, locking the 2 push rods into place. The right front cylinder half then is attached to the left, and the front cylinder assembly is attached to the crankcase assembly. The second push rod plate now is attached to the crankcase assembly in front of the front cylinder assembly, and then the 2 push rods are attached to the push rod plate. Then finally a cylinder head is attached to the rear cylinder, locking those 2 push rods into place as well. Now attach the carburetor front to the carburetor rear, and the carburetor assembly, air cleaner, and timer case are then painted tester silver. The carburetor assembly is attached to the front and rear cylinders, and the air cleaner is attached to the carburetor assembly. Then the timer case is attached to the front cylinder assembly. Paint the spark plugs red, and the oil pump and the timing gear cases are painted silver. The generator is painted flat black. Now the spark plugs are installed into the cylinder assemblies at what looks like approximately a 45-degree angle. The oil pump and timing gear case are attached to the right crankcase half, and the generator is attached to its housing. Now the generator assembly is attached to the timing gear case. She's really starting to shape up now, and we can attach the engine to the frame at the base. Pull out these parts for the transmission, and the release lever and the front are painted silver, and the transmission upper case is glued to the lower. Then the transmission front is attached to the case assembly, and the release lever is secured to the front of the transmission. Now, as you see it resting here on the base plate, you can add the transmission assembly to the frame assembly at the base just behind the motor. Grab these parts out for some front end work, and the headlight housings and both brackets are painted silver. Then the lenses are painted turn signal amber, and the headlight lenses are attached to the headlight housings. The brackets are then attached to the back of the headlight housings, and the headlight assemblies are attached to the front forks. Now the right hand grip top is attached to the bottom, and the right hand grip assembly installed onto the front fork assembly on the right side. Now the left hand grip bottom is attached to its top and also then installed on the left front fork assembly. Now we'll work with these parts to assemble the front wheel, and the front tire insert is placed into the front tire, and the front wheel half is installed into the front wheel assembly. Then the second front wheel half is installed to the wheel assembly and attached to the first. Line up those spokes properly. When the assembly is good and dry, go ahead and wiggle that front tire assembly onto the front forks there on the spindles at the forward portion. Now we can work on these parts, and the pedal and the brake pedal are painted silver, and they're both detailed with some flat black. Then the pedal is attached to the right side of the transmission assembly, and the brake pedal is attached to the right side of the frame assembly. The lower exhaust pipe is glued to the front cylinder assembly and a post in the back on the right side of the frame. Then the upper exhaust pipe is attached to the rear cylinder assembly and the lower exhaust pipe. Gather these parts to work on the clutch assembly. So then that assembly, the clutch pedal and the foot rests are painted silver, and the foot rests are attached near the fork assembly on each side of the frame. The clutch pedal is detailed with some flat black, then attached to the clutch assembly, and the clutch assembly is attached to the left side of the frame and the left side of the transmission assembly. The chain drive cover inner portion is then attached to the chain drive cover outer section, and the chain drive cover assembly is attached to the left side of the engine and the left side of the frame. I discovered through the internet that California had used two colors for their plates in the 70s. One was black with yellow letters and blue with yellow letters, so I painted the license plate Model Master gloss black and the raised letters with some yellow. And you can just scrape it off and use white letters, I guess, but this seemed to be most accurate. And the Maltese cross is painted silver, and then the taillight lenses were painted acrylic clear red. Now the taillight lens can be attached to the taillight, and then the taillight assembly glued to the rear fender, and the Maltese cross is secured to the top of the sissy bar. The instruction sheet indicates that there should be some red tubing for this section, but there was only black tubing in this kit, so that's what we'll use. Now there are 4 tubes that get cut. Tube B is 5/8 inch long, C is 1 13/16, and there's 2 of those, and tube D is 6 1/4 inches long. Now tube B is attached to the rear cylinder spark plug and ignition coil, and I actually cut mine a 1/2 inch long, thinking that 5/8 was too long to look realistic. But the first tube C is attached to the front spark plug and then the ignition coil, and the second tube C is attached to the post on the frame and then the carburetor assembly. Tube D is attached to the left hand grip assembly and the post on the center frame. There you have it. Your model is complete, and I for one am just happy that Revell is bringing back some of these wonderful 1/8 scale motorcycle kits. They've gotten pretty pricey on the internet as they're getting older and older, and some of the ones that they're bringing back are some of the best examples. So if you've got a chance and you'd like to put one of these together, I don't think you'll be disappointed. The construction is very straightforward. Just about any classic collector or motorcycle enthusiast would, or even a Tom Daniel fan to add to that collection, would love this kit. And I would definitely recommend it. I think 5 rating is a little high. I think you could probably do this with intermediate skills. There were some imperfections, just putting it together, and I was looking for a nice eerie look from the headlights with that yellow. And with only some slight warp to the frame, that came out as soon as they were glued together, so it went together very well. The one thing I would have liked to have seen was maybe some gas tank decals or some pinstriping for the fenders. As a comparison, you can see Revell's 7307 Harley Davidson Freedom Chopper kit here. Almost everything is identical in detail, just a different color for the Grim Reaper and some headlight treatment. We hope you liked this premium step-by-step model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook and always at our website, www.rightonreplicas.com. Thanks!